Now let's talk about other measures of central tendency. We've discussed the average, and that's one that we'll use the most often. A second measure of central tendency is the median. Now, when you think of the median, the normal way that we use the word median in English is that middle part of the road that you're not supposed to drive on. And the median is the middle score. So if you were to put all of the scores in order, from lowest to highest or highest to lowest, and you were to choose the middle one, that would be the median. And that works out really nicely if you've got an odd number of scores, because you'd have an equal number on both sides. If there's an even number of scores, like if you had 6 scores, there would be no middle score. So what you do is you take you take the two middle scores, like the third and the fourth, if you had 6 numbers, and you take the average of those, and that would be the median. Now, this turns out to be pretty similar to the 50th percentile. It's a number below which are half the scores, below which are 50%, and similarly, there's 50% of the scores above the median. So that's one of the scores that one of the measures of central tendency that we use quite often, especially when numbers are skewed, because if they're skewed, especially high numbers will change the average and give us an unrealistic expectation of what we're doing. For example, if we had 10 people in a classroom and one of whom was Bill Gates, and we asked, what's the average annual income of the 10 students? Well, it would be over $1 billion a year because Bill Gates is making billions of dollars each year. And so it'd be a lot more meaningful to provide the median income for the people in the class, which might be like 30,000 or 35,000 or something like that. That would give us a better idea of what the typical score is. So the median is especially used when scores are skewed. The other measure of central tendency is the mode, and this comes from the French word mode in French, which means in style or the style. And the mode is the most common score. It's like, what's the most common? What are people wearing? Oh, that's the style. And so when we have a frequency distribution, especially a histogram, we can see the mode really quickly. It's the high point. So here we have a typical bell curve, and we can see right away that this bin contains the modal score. Now, something to pay attention to is that normally distributions are unimodal. There's only one mode, but sometimes we can get a bimodal distribution. For example, if we were measuring athletes at a school that only had 2 teams, a girls' gymnastic team and a men's basketball team, if we were to graph everybody's height, we'd have one group that's a lot shorter than the other group, and we would have 2 modal scores in a situation like that. Sometimes it's called a camel distribution because it looks like two humps on a camel. So that's the mode. So we don't use the mode very often, except for getting an idea like, oh, what's the most common score? And when we draw the frequency distributions, the mode is what stands out the most. Now let's compare the mean, the median, and the mode. The mean, sometimes called the arithmetic mean, is the only one that can be calculated algebraically. It's the only one for which we've got a formula. So when we want to do calculations, that's a pretty good thing to be able to have a formula. It's also the only one where every score counts. If you change any score, it's going to change the meaning. It's going to change the mean. It might not change the median, it might not change the mode, but it will change the mean. And it's the only one that's sensitive to extreme scores. If you want to make sure you're including the people that are not too normal, you need to use the mean. Now, the median, as we said before, is not sensitive to extreme scores. So when you want to present information that doesn't include the outliers, the median is very useful. The mode is useful because it's the easiest to see in frequency curves. Like the median, it's not sensitive to extreme scores, but unfortunately, it's not always meaningful because you might not have a mode, you might not, the mode might not be even close to the mean or the median, so it's not always the most useful. Let's look at an example. I have three friends. I have Beep Beep, hello. I've got Oliver, hi. And I've got Ugly, hi. And they weigh 400 grams, 300 grams, and 50 grams. Now, if we wanted to find the mean, we would add up the three scores of these three guys, and it would be 50 plus 300 plus 50, that's 750. We divide it by 3, and that comes out to a mean of 250 grams. To calculate the median weight of the bears, we put them in order: small, medium, large, and the middle score is Oliver, who weighs 300 grams. So the median score of the bears would be 300 grams. Now the mode is the weight that occurs the most often. In this case, there is no weight that occurs most often. Each bear has a different weight, so the mode is not especially meaningful in this situation. Let's use the data analysis tool in Excel to calculate the measure of the central tendency without typing in all of these commands. Now, if you haven't installed the data analysis Toolpak, you need to do that. And I've made some videos on how to do that. You only need to do it once. So if you've installed it once, it should still be there. And so we're going to look at some data from my class on how much people liked Justin Bieber. And now to use the data analysis Toolpak, I can't actually use it from within Excel, so I'm going to bring over Excel here. And so here we have the data here. Now what I want to do is I want to go to choose the Data tab of Excel. I want to go to Data Analysis. And I want to choose Descriptive Statistics, and I click OK, and it says what's the input range, and I'm going to select this column. So I start on C3, and then I'm going to put the down arrow until I get to C39. It's grouped by columns. I've got the first row is a label, so I'm going to click that. That variable is called Bieber. The output range, I'm going to click that because I want it to be on the same spreadsheet. I don't want to go to a new tab down there. And now that I clicked an output range, you've got to be careful because the cursor went back up to the input range. I want to click in the output range, and I'll put the upper left-hand corner of the table in E3. And then I want the summary statistics, and then I press OK. And it gives me a bunch of numbers here. Now the decimal points are really large, so I'm going to clean those up. I'm going to home, and then for the number format, I'm going to choose number. And I think I'll make this table a little wider so that we can see everything that we're looking at here. And now I have the mean. Let me highlight that. I'll select these two cells and highlight here. We've got the mean. We have the median is 2, and the mode is 1. And so there I've calculated the three measures of central tendency using the data analysis tool in Excel.